Howdy everyone, and welcome back to The More You Grow. It's really chilly outside, so I'm spending the day in the greenhouse today getting a few things done. Even though it's chilly outside, spring is upon us and it's about time to start planting the first crops of the year. So I wanted to do this video to give you the top 10 crops to start planting in your 2018 garden. So let's get into it. Before I get too deep into these 10 vegetable crops, I wanted to let y'all know the planting dates I say may not be right for your location. Depending on where you live, it could be earlier in the year, it could be later in the year than what I say. And you can find out those dates either from your local extension agent, you can find out by doing a little research online. I've got all my planting dates from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension's page. I'm going to leave a link for that down in the description. So if you live in the north central Texas to central Texas area, I've got all the planting dates down for you below. If you live somewhere else, be sure to just find out what planting dates are right for you. So let's get into the first vegetable crop of this video. The first crop I want to get into in this video is probably everybody's favorite to plant in early spring, and that's potatoes. And you can plant potatoes in the north central Texas area to central Texas area around February 10th to March 1st. And the way you plant potatoes is by either ordering or buying or raising your own seed potatoes. A seed potato is just one that didn't make it into the food industry or one that didn't make it into the grocery stores that has been tested to be certified clean of pests and diseases. And I actually just got about 16 pounds of seed potatoes to plant out at the new farm that we have back home. If you haven't seen the video about the new farm, I'll leave a link to it above. And that's going to be a lot of potatoes, you guys. I'll talk a little bit maybe about how to plant potatoes, how to get your seed potatoes prepared for the best success. But for now, we're going to go on for the rest of this video. So let's go on to number 2. Next up, we have one of my favorite crops, onions. Now's the time to get those in if you're doing transplants, which that can either be as bulbs or as transplant themselves. The difference between the two is the bulbs are going to be in a loose bag with no tops on them. They'll just look like little onions like you see in the store. Or you could have transplants, which you'll see like in bundles at your feed store. They'll have the tops on them already and they'll be kind of ready to go. The difference between the two also is the bulbs seem to take a little bit longer, but they're a little bit more protected from cold weather if it were to come up. And the transplants are a little bit faster of growing, but they could be frozen a little bit if we get a hard freeze. You can also plant onions by seed, but the problem is with that is you're going to have to start those seeds around fall of the previous year to get those ready for the spring of the next year. So let's go on to the next crop. Next up, we have our brassicas, which are everything from cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi. Those are all considered brassicas or in the Brassicaceae family. And a fun fact about all those vegetables I just listed is that they all stem from one kale relative that was selectively bred by people to have different characteristics. Kind of like how we have dogs to look differently. We selectively bred those to have different characteristics. And they can be planted around the same time, around February 20th to around the 1st of March if you're doing transplants. And that's the way I actually recommend for y'all to start your brassica crops. Start them in 6-packs indoors, in a sunny window, or in a greenhouse if you have it. The reason why I recommend to do those as transplants rather than direct seeding them is that if you direct seed them, you run the risk of the little sprouts dying if you have a hard freeze. They're not as cold hardy when they're little. If you let them grow out a little bit, they're a lot more cold tolerant. You run the risk of them getting knocked over by your water or wind or getting munched on by insects because they're nice little healthy sprouts. We even like to eat the sprouts. So I recommend to start those as transplant indoors before the planting date and get those all started where they're maybe about this tall before you go put them out in the field. So let's go on to the next crop. Next up we have asparagus, which is probably one of my favorite vegetables because I love to grill it, I love to stir fry it, and I love it because it's a perennial, which means we only have to plant it once, we never have to plant it again, we just have to maintain it over the years. And right about now is the time to start planting your asparagus as crowns. And that's just a term for the actual dormant plant with roots attached and everything. You can get those at your feed store sometimes. You can get them online, and you can plant those about every 14 to 16 inches or so, and they'll grow together. I'm not sure on the actual planting distance. I can look that up for y'all. I hope to be planting some asparagus soon. I'd love to have some rows of asparagus or plant them as a border plant. It's kind of whatever you decide. It's kind of one of those things that you can be creative with. I can actually do a video on how to plant asparagus. If y'all like, just leave it down in the comments. I'll try to do that for you. But let's go on to the next crop. Number 5 in this list is going to be beets. Now I have to admit, beets aren't one of my favorite vegetables, but they're a lot of people's favorites, and they're super healthy for you. Full of antioxidants, full of vitamins, minerals, super good for you. And beets are going to be one of those crops that you want to plant around February 20th to about the 1st of March, middle of March, and you want to only direct seed those. Or in other words, you only want to take the seeds and put them directly in the ground. You don't want to grow them as transplants, because beets are a root crop to where if you disturb those roots, they don't recover well and they don't ever really produce the way they would if you direct plant them. And I would say just make a row, kind of sprinkle the seeds in there, try to get them about maybe an inch or so apart, and just as they grow and as they come up, you want to thin those down to give the healthiest beets enough room to expand and grow those nice healthy roots. My favorite part of the beet is actually the leaves. I love beet greens, where you can stir fry those down with a little olive oil, garlic, a little lemon juice. They're absolutely amazing, tender, and super healthy for you. So let's go on to number 6. Next up, we've got spinach, and I'm going to say spinach and Swiss chard in this video. They are different plants, but I'm going to lump them together for the sake of this video. And I love them both because they make a good cool season green that you can have a continual harvest from by just taking the outermost leaves and allowing those new leaves to grow from the center. And I also like to have a staggered planting on these, where I'll plant a row of spinach and I will plant another row of spinach about 2 to 3 weeks later to have this continual cropping system, whereas one starting to be done, I can have another one ready to go. I like to plant my spinach around the middle to end of February to about the middle of March. They can handle some cold weather, but you want to be sure to try to avoid any heavy freezes if you can. And I would say to plant those direct seeded again. You can just direct seed those and thin them out as they get more mature and as they grow bigger. You could probably do those as transplants, but I've never found the need to. But that's enough about that. Let's go on to number 7. Number 7 in this list is going to be peas. That's everything from your English shelling peas, your sugar snap peas, your snow peas, things like that. All the resources I've seen say you can start planting those around February 15th in my area to about the beginning of March. But I like to plant mine a little bit closer to the beginning of March to middle of March. Just because that even though they are cold hardy, they're not as cold hardy as the thick leaved vegetables like your brassicas, like cabbage and things like that. So I like to give mine a little bit longer before I plant them. And with peas, you're going to need a few extra things that you're not going to need with other vegetables. Peas always need something to grow up. They are a vining plant. So you need to get yourself something like a trellis. You can get yourself a cattle panel, things like that. Those always work well for me. And with peas, you always want to direct seed your peas. You never want to transplant them. The root systems are very fragile. They don't do well with transplanting. So I'd say put them in the ground, direct seed them in your garden about a foot apart maybe. That'll give them plenty of space and give themselves a trellis to where they can crawl up and do well for you. So let's go on to number 8. Number 8 in this list is going to be radishes and turnips. And those are a fun one to grow because radishes are one of the fastest things you can grow. You can have radishes ready to harvest in about 28 days to 30 days after you've planted your seeds. Super fast. And in an upcoming video, I'm actually going to show you my favorite thing to do with radishes. I actually don't eat the roots. I let my radishes go to seed, go to flower and go to the little seed pods. And before those pods turn brown and crunchy while they're still green, crispy, and tender, I absolutely love them. They're like a snow pea crossed with a radish. They've got that sweet, crispy green of a snow pea, but mixed with a little bit of heat of a radish. They make excellent stir fries. I actually love them just raw on their own. I eat them right off the plant, put them in salads, they're great. But I'm gonna do a whole video on that. But for the sake of this video, all you need to do to plant your radishes is you want to direct seed them. You don't want to transplant radishes or turnips. They're another root crop that doesn't do well with transplanting. The roots don't do well disturbed. So direct seed those in your garden. Just kind of make a thin strip in a row and thin those out as they grow to where they have enough space to expand. You don't want to let those get too clustered together or they won't be able to expand those roots out and make those nice, thick, round roots we're looking for. But that's all it really takes for your radishes and turnips. Let's go on to number 9. Number 9 in this list is going to be lettuce. Probably one of the most widely consumed vegetables out there in things like salads. Even people that don't like other vegetables will tend to eat a salad if given one. And the way I like to start my lettuce is around the early parts of the year, around the 1st of February, things like that. I like to start those indoors. This is going to be a crop that I recommend starting indoors. I like to start them in 6-packs. I love to grow the kinds such as Bib lettuce, butter crunch, things like that. I try to stay away from the head lettuces like iceberg, just because the iceberg lettuce doesn't have that much flavor to me. It's not all that exciting, but your things like butter crunch have a wonderful flavor, and I highly recommend y'all giving that a try. But get those started in 6-packs and get them up to maybe about this big, and then you can transplant those out into your garden. The reason why I say to transplant those is because it seems like everything in the world loves to eat a baby lettuce plant. It's tender, delicious, and it's just asking to be eaten by insects and other things out in the field. So get it started, it'll give it a little bit of head start, and it'll be well on its way. So let's go to number 10 in this list. Number 10 in this video is by far my favorite vegetable to grow, to harvest, and to eat. I'm talking about carrots. Carrots are like the candy of the garden to me. They're sweet, crunchy, delicious, and they're healthy for you. And if you haven't ever tasted a freshly harvested carrot, you've never really tasted a carrot at all, in my opinion. There's a night and day difference from store-bought carrots to freshly harvested carrots. So I highly recommend giving them a try. Carrots, you can start planting those around the middle of February to the 1st of March, and as with other root vegetables in this video, you want to direct seed those. They do not do well as far as transplants. You can't disturb those roots or they go into shock and they just don't grow well. As far as your garden goes, just make your row, just direct seed those, sprinkle those seeds in, and thin those carrot seeds down when they get, about this big, to where you have a little bit of space in between your carrots where those roots can expand and not just get super thin and have a chance to get thicker. And with carrots, they're a little bit different than the other root crops because they grow so deep. You want to have a very loose, well-worked soil. If you have a heavy clay soil and you don't get it really loose and well-worked, you're going to end up with short, stubby carrots. If you got a soil that has a lot of rocks in it, what those carrots do is they hit that rock and they start curving and bending, and you don't end up with the nice, straight, thick, pretty carrots. They'll still eat well, they're just not going to be your ideal carrot shape. I wanted to throw in an added bonus at the end of this video. I don't know much about this vegetable crop, but we're going to give it a try this year. I have artichokes here. I know this is one that you can plant in the early part of the year, and this is another perennial crop like our asparagus, where if you take care of it right, you can get this growing year after year, especially if you live in the right environment. But I don't know a lot about this crop. If you've grown this before, I would love it if you'd leave me any tips and suggestions down in the comments on how to grow these, but we're going to give them a shot here on the channel. So I think that's going to be it for this video. If you think there needs to be something else added, or if you think that another vegetable crop is a good one to start in the early spring, leave it down in the comments for everyone else to see. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can be there for when all these new videos come out. And until next time, I hope you'll join me right here on The More You Grow.